Mariah's down here still? Yeah, she is. Okay, you tell me when we're ready.
You're good. You're good on. Ken, you got us back on unmuted.
Yep, I'm muted.
All right, I'm calling us back to order. We have 3 projects that Mariah is going to tell us about. And I apologize for that last bit and for having to leave abruptly. That is my life.
Yep, there you go.
Oh, I apologize. I have to back up. There were some folks that wanted to speak on the other one right before I shut us down. And Dan Osted, did you want to say
I was wondering if
something?
we should continue or leave these 3 projects to be talked about at next county board meeting because half of them aren't here.
Do we even have a quorum?
We
Yes.
do.
I'm gonna cry now.
What'd you say? What?
I've been sitting here for 3 hours.
We got 10 minutes to go through.
I
It's
mean,
worth it.
I've seen your point,
Okay.
Dan, and I was thinking, I didn't realize it was gonna be this sparse, and I don't know what to do about it.
I mean, what do we got left here?
Okay, Ken?
Madam Chairperson. Nobody has to explain a vote on the floor here, but in this case, I want to. I want to explain my vote. We should have talked about this before we even got into the discussion on the special reports. We should have gone to it so we had enough time. There were questions I wanted to ask yet. There were things that I still had. I just wanted to clarify.
Okay,
And so
fair.
and to come, and I'm not criticizing, well, I guess I kind of am, but to be told, we've never done it this way where all of a sudden we stopped the debate and, but we got to do this right now. Let's go. Let's take the vote so we can get it done. That's not the way we do business here or have ever done it before. And because of that, I voted no. I mean, I'm on board with it, but I just needed about 10, 15 more minutes, a couple questions. At this point, I thought, no, this isn't right. So that's why I voted no. But I am glad it passed because I believe it is the thing to do.
Okay, thank you. All right, I guess
Right.
back to Mariah.
I mean, I do feel like I got the short end of the stick here.
Sorry.
And I hope everybody else had a bigger breakfast than I did. So, no. So I'll give a couple brief overview remarks about the housing thing or housing items. I'm sure you all know this is an issue that we've been talking about for going on 25 years now in Door County, and clearly private market forces are not fixing this problem because it's only gotten worse, especially during the COVID era. We had the 2019 study that was a partnership between the county and the Economic Development Corporation and businesses and municipalities that identified that at that point, we were already 500 workforce units short in the county. And then they projected out to 2023 that we were going to be hundreds more for seniors, for workforce, whether it's seasonal or year round, for people to rent or buy, anything you can think of that we're short, and it's only gotten worse. And I've only skimmed, and I would defer to Grant and Steve and Ken, I've only skimmed the ARPA guideline, the summary of the guidelines. I didn't read the whole 270-page thing. But I think these projects, I think even if we had to go for whatever reason under the regular route rather than the defederalized, that these projects would qualify because of the income levels that they're serving. Both of these projects will not have any ongoing costs to the county. We're not buying buildings. We're not hiring people. We're not even going to have staff members that are, other than monitoring for the financial accounting piece, we're not going to have staff. These are going to be outside projects that are done in public-private partnerships. So there's no ongoing costs with either of them. With the revolving loan fund, so this is the pilot program piece of a larger idea that came from the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority Rural Affordable Workforce Housing Pilot project that Door County was selected to be first out of the state, out of in 2020 to 2021. The basic concept is that the Community Foundation and NeighborWorks Green Bay are going to set up a new entity, and it's going to be a CDFI, and I always forget what that stands for. I think it's Community Development Financial Institution, and that will allow access to all sorts of other funds that are out there. And this piece of it that we're asking that money get put into would be a revolving loan fund for multifamily rental housing in the county. WHEDA, Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, has agreed to put in $1.5 million for 30 years at 0% interest. And they've basically kind of said they think at the end of the 30 that they probably wouldn't make us pay it back anyway. And us being this new entity, not the county. And then they're asking for a $1.5 million local match, which the Community Foundation has agreed that they will take on that fundraising, but this would obviously be a nice jump start to that and really leverage their efforts as well. The rental pool would be managed by this community development financial institution that would be governed by NeighborWorks Green Bay and the Door County Community Foundation. And it would give low interest loans to developers that want to do affordable homes. I provided you a lot of numbers, and if you want at some point, we could hopefully soon have Brett McCoy or Noel Halverson come from the Community Foundation or NeighborWorks to really walk you through all the work they have done, because this isn't something that we cobbled together in response to these funds. We've been working on this idea for 1.5 years now, and the timing is just absolutely perfect for some of this money to go in there. I should say that rural affordable workforce housing pilot, we had a team in the county that worked with WHEDA on all of this, and it was people from the city, the county, the Economic Development Corporation, the Community Foundation, the Door County Housing Partnership, NeighborWorks Green Bay, Lakeshore Community Action Programs, Scandia Village, and then a couple of other businesses as well. So it was a really broad-reaching team that has fleshed out this idea. I'll pause on that one and see if anybody has any questions. This is, I can't emphasize enough how great this is to be leveraging your money. So you're not putting in all the money for this fund, you're putting in part of a match. And then we think over with the calculations that Brett and Noel have done out going about 2022 or 22 years from now, that it would get probably about 700 new affordable units into the mix. And those would be managed completely by and monitored by the new entity, not the county.
Bob,
Thank you, Madam Chair. My typical question, is this a project that could, again, hypothetically, could this project succeed with 50% of the funding that you're asking for?
Could it succeed with?
Could it succeed with less? It's kind of a generic question about funding. Could this succeed with less money?
We have to match the WHEDA money. So we have to match the 1.5 in order to be able to access all the 1.5. So if we as a community don't fork, and I'm not saying the county, but the entire county with a small c, if we don't fork over that $1.5 million, we won't be able to leverage the WHEDA dollars.
Thank you for that clarification. And just from what I'm seeing, I'm wondering if, and this is not to get an answer out of you, but I'm just saying that I think this might be one of those where we might want to fund this more than it's even being asked for, because it just seems like this is not important. Anyway, thank you.
David Engelbert?
Yes, I guess the question that I asked at finance, I just like to be kind of reassured that this money can go into a revolving loan fund, because, you know, under the guides that it's being given to the county.
Yeah, and I don't know if I answered that very clearly at finance, so thank you for asking that. So there are already developers, not because of this, but that have been calling Marty Olenichek at the city and me in the last year or so saying, hey, I'd like to do some affordable housing in Door County, including 2 that are very serious and 1 that already owns property, and it's not the project that's on your list today, who want to do something like this. And so the idea wouldn't be that the county would be putting in the money in the pot and then that would be the end of it. It would go towards actual specific projects in 2023 and 2024, or up until. So I think it qualifies because it would be going for, you'd be putting money in a revolving loan fund, but it would be going for, you know, Project X in Sister Bay or Project Y in Sturgeon Bay. So as best I could tell, but again, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
So.
Guess it'd be good to have Grant's opinion and or someone's on that. just to be Sure.
Do you want to venture an opinion, Grant?
Well, I'll offer an observation. This is one of the areas where we're going to have to sit down and take a look at the Treasury rules and decide if in fact we would be better off going under one of the 5 categories other than revenue loss, because we would have to fit it otherwise within the relatively broad category of government services. There may be more strings and hoops we have to jump through if we did it under one of the other 5 categories, but it might be easier to get the funds to this purpose doing that. I just don't know. And that's what I was talking about, staff research, whether it's me, Mariah, in spite of her not being an attorney, is just as able as I am to review and interpret things. Steve is going to have to take a look at it, and Ken's ultimately going to have to decide and make a recommendation. So we're going to be a little bit deliberate. It's not that this can't be done. It just can't be done maybe as quickly as we want it to be necessarily.
Okay, David Enningle?
Most of these projects that have come forward to this body today have been presented by a department head relative to the activity, child housing, so forth, and that childcare and other items. This case, it's coming before us from the Land Use Services Department Head, Mariah Good. But this is not normally within the realm of that department, nor is this the 2 site locations that I'm familiar with, is City of Sturgeon Bay and the Village of Sister Bay. So I would ask for the general public here and the general public that might be viewing this. It is not the Land Use Services Department that is actually doing any of this, correct?
Oh, no.
I'm not sure.
I guess,
I know she sits on a number of boards that are relevant to.
no, but I mean, our department has been active in housing throughout the county, whether
Correct.
even the city for years.
Correct.
So I would not, I think it's very much a project of that department.
Okay.
In terms of both of their research, the knowledge that they bring to the table, the effort they've been putting forward the past 20 years, but even the past 3 to 4 years. It's not Mariah sitting outside. It's been that department, both her, Becky, and staff that have been very active in addressing housing as land use services. There's multiple divisions for that. There's the real property, there's the zoning, but a big part of it's planning, and planning's housing, economic development, other opportunities, wetlands. So it's been, I think, a core function of that department.
Well, I bring that up because of the statement several times of the we and the us, and she clarified on one example of another third-party entity. Because it's not the project itself that would be undertaken by the department.
So I was staff, and there were 2 city and 2 county staff people that served that WIDA team, the local team. And so we did the bulk of the work. And Becky and I've sat on different housing committees. I think I'm on 3 different ones now for over 22 years. And like Ken said, a lot of them serve the incorporated areas or the county generally. It's not like we're only going to do things that are subject to the county zoning jurisdiction. Shoot, I lost the main thing I was going to say. Well, maybe it'll come back to me. But I think, oh, I know what the other part is. So I'm still a part of the, so the WIDA pilot's over. WIDA was like, okay, great. That project sounds great. Here's how it's all going to work out. And it's taken from June until last week for us to get all the details worked out with them as far as how the money's going to come in and all that kind of stuff. But I'm still part of the subset of people, which is the Community Foundation, the Economic Development Corporate, well, no, not for this one, the Community Foundation, NeighborWorks Green Bay, the city, the county, as far as the steering committee for this new entity that's going to get set up. So when I say we, I'm part of that group.
And that's kind of what I'm trying to get to, is that, you know, the other presentations have been by a department specifically for the department relative to activities. I know you're interacting with other groups that are tied to this, so people don't recognize it as a zoning issue, conflict of some sort.
Right. And I tried to be clear in the materials that I provided that those are from NeighborWorks Green Bay and the Door County Community Foundation. They've gone through both of their board processes and gotten the okay to get going on starting this new entity. I provided the spreadsheet numbers that they've worked out. So I'm here on their behalf. They would be happy to come and talk to you about it if you want them to come.
Thank you.
Okay, Dan?
I'm a little confused on this. Community Foundation, this is where the money goes to. That's a nonprofit organization. How is that any different than nonprofit organizations such as HELP that we talked about not giving money? Where's the division? And what's a nonprofit that we can fund and nonprofit that we should think about funding?
Again, in this sense, we're not funding the Community Foundation.
We're giving the money to somebody though.
They're a placeholder for the funds to be administered and issued out.
Who does
So we're
that?
not,
Who does that though? I mean, you see where I'm at, asking that we're seem to be giving money outside of our government, county government. And there's different parameters on who we can give that money to.
I understand the question. And to me, it's similar to what you've done for years and years and years with the Economic Development Corporation and when they had a revolving loan fund for economic development projects. It's to the same concept. So the CDFI will be managed. It'll be a separate corporate entity that'll be set up by and governed by NeighborWorks Green Bay and Door County Community Foundation people. But you will obviously be able to look at whatever paperwork you need related to the county money as it's funneling through. So I guess I'm not picking on HELP. I used to work there. It's a great organization, but I repeat again, we didn't come up with this because of the county being handed this chunk of money. We've been working on this for like a year and a half, and I thought, oh my God, this is perfect. And so that's why that proposal was brought forth. And I should say this and the other housing piece that I've got before you today, I didn't just pull them out of my brain and say, this is what, I think we should bring to the county or the county board to look at. I reached out to all of the other partners that were part of that WIDA housing pilot. So all those organizations and businesses that I rattled off earlier to say, does anybody else have any other ideas? Because we had been asked as department heads to come up with ideas for the money. And so I reached out to all of them to get all their ideas. Because as Ken said, and I think is shown on your sheet, there were probably at least half a dozen housing ideas that came forward. These are just the two that got the most votes at the retreat.
Vinny?
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you to Mariah for all the work and for being on these committees. I think these partnerships and leveraging funds from multiple organizations is how we solve these big community problems. And I just think the leadership on that has been great. So thank you. The other part of that is what's the timeline for you? And I just trying to keep these in mind because this is a long day and I feel a little overwhelmed with all of these different proposals, but I want to support them all as quickly as we can so people can not miss grant opportunities and not miss things that need to start going so that leveraging can be maximized. So what would kind of be an idea for you, ideal?
For this one? This one isn't as immediate as the next one that I'm going to talk about. But I would say it would be nice if we knew probably within 2 to 3 months on this one. Just it's going to help with the further outreach for the external fundraising. But yeah, I mean, that the entity is not set up yet. That's going to happen in probably the next 6 months.
Okay, thank you.
You want to go on with the next project?
Sure. So I obviously don't need to do the same prelude. Housing is still a problem like it was 10 minutes ago. This one is ready, and Marissa Downs, I hope she's still online. I think okay. If you need to ask the developer any questions, this one is shovel ready. She is literally ready to put a shovel in the ground in April. And so that's the reason that this has been brought forward to you as compared to like any other projects out there. We didn't have any other entity, either developers, for-profit or nonprofit, or municipalities that were like, yep, we're going to build X number of units over here. We want to be on your list. And like I said, I did do outreach to other areas. To my mind, this isn't a whole lot different and it's a lot more bang for your buck than the CDBG money, which is going to the West Side School redevelopment, which I think is a great project. I think that's an amazing use of those funds and that money. With what we're asking for this project, or what I'm asking for this project, you're only looking at probably about $11,000 per unit as a subsidy, and you're going to get 45 income controlled units in Sister Bay next to the daycare for the next 30 years. And I think that's an amazing investment. And again, this is another example. If you've got a private developer that's forking over a couple $1 million of her own through mortgages, you've got the state income tax or low income housing tax credits that are coming in. I did provide a brief budget on that. So I think this is another one where you're really leveraging the dollars that the county would be putting into the project. Those tax credits, I think in years past, used to probably make the projects much easier for developers to do. But these days, even if you get awarded those tax credits by the state, it's not enough money for the developer to be able to do the project. They don't even start making any money for so long that it actually amazes me that developers do these projects. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling from my notes, but Marissa is online if you've got questions for her. And I think, again, this one is literally shovel ready to go in the ground in April.
Questions?
Oh, one more thing I want to add. This project is the first project in Door County that has been awarded low-income housing tax credits through the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority for several years. And the way they do the scoring for those projects, it's very hard for rural areas, and all of Door County is considered rural. It's very hard for rural areas to score well enough to get these projects. And you're still often lucky if you're going to get one every 3 years.
Bob?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So is it appropriate to say that this project in Sister Bay, if it wasn't about to happen, would this be a project that then would be applying to the revolving loan fund that we just talked about? And so I guess that does, and it's because it's also, tickles to the question that Mr. Enigal brought up earlier, like, and just others have, mentioned on like, well, who, how do we decide and what's the proper, procedure? And it almost seems like, well, shouldn't this project in Sister Bay go through, I guess that assumes that we would set up the revolving loan fund, but I almost wonder, like, shouldn't we set up the revolving loan fund and then have the process to fairly vet who's doing, so I guess if you could address that generally, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I might have to have Marissa answer the question about like if those tax credits expire, because I think she was actually awarded them in fall of 2020. And I'm not positive. So I don't know whether it would be an opportunity for her to apply to that revolving loan fund or not, since it doesn't exist yet.
But even generically, this is a project, ideally, like in an ideal scenario with enough time, we would set up a revolving loan fund. And then this is the kind of project that would apply to that fund, correct?
Yes, except that, again, remember, these low-income housing tax credit projects are few and far between. So that's one reason, that's actually the main reason to have a separate revolving loan fund that, yeah, maybe a low-income housing tax credit project will use the loan fund, but it's more for other developers to be able to get financing cheaper than they can get from banks in order to incentivize them to actually build units that are affordable. So.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to answer something? Okay. Right. Roy?
So I'm a little bit confused on this one. Is this a request from the county for $500, strictly a grant, or is this going to be a loan?
This is a grant.
This is a full grant from the ARP for $500,000.
Yep. And you'll leverage the other 10 million or so that the project is going to cost, just like the over $1 million grant you gave to the West Side School project for a lot fewer units.
David Enigal?
Give me a second.
And again, I love that West Side School.
Go to page 82. Or sorry, 80. Maybe
David?
show page 80 from the packet.
Oh. You'd like to
Put it on the screen if they can.
Can you do
Otherwise,
that?
Mariah, I'm been reading this over and over and over, and because of the acronyms, I can't quite understand the intent of this spreadsheet.
The page 80 is what you're looking at?
Correct.
Those are the rents that, when the way the WIDA low-income housing tax credit stuff works, like you get different levels of tax credits based on what you're going to rent those units at, compared to either county median income, which is CMI, or area median income. So these are the layouts that Marissa's Downs project is going to have for those 45 units in Sister Bay. So this chart is laying out how many units are going to be 1 bedroom, how many are going to be 2, how many 3, and then which ones are going to be priced to be affordable for 30% of county median income, 50%, 60%, and 80%
So
of
what
county
is
median. And then that's monitored for 30 years by WIDA to make sure that those are actually residences with people that have meet those income qualifications.
What's the purpose of the 50% home that has no values?
That means she's not doing any units at 50% with that funding source.
So it's a style of the CMI or the home is a direct correlation to the style of funding that the
Home is, I think those are federal, Are those USDA dollars? No, I can't remember.
But it's
No, I think those are HUD
connected to
dollars.
another calculation system.
Yeah, I think this chart comes from WIDA. Like, I think when you're doing your work with WIDA, that this is what they have you fill in. And she's apparently not doing any of those style of units, but she's doing 40% of the units that she is doing are going to be priced for 50% of
Okay.
the area median income.
Anyone else? Okay, oh, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Okay, I'm not sure I understand this. We are gonna give this person $500,000 out of that ARPA money to build a housing complex that she will own and either rent it and get the money or sell the units and get the money, and we get nothing in return. What comes back to us? Nothing. We have to just spend the money. So is this considered, we're doing this as a service? Or that's what I say, I don't understand.
So
If you're gonna build a $10 million project, don't come to the government and ask for 500, just reach into your pockets and come up with the other $500,000 and build it.
But
this is a special type of project,
This is
and these
special.
are things that municipalities invest in all the time, and the county has invested in projects like this previously with, similar to this, and, yeah. I mean, you're right, are we gonna get any dollars back to the county? No. Are we going to get tax revenue? Yes. Are we going to get 45 affordable units for families? Yes. Is it gonna be in a fantastic location next to the daycare and all sorts of other places in Sister Bay that are struggling for workers? Yes. So I guess it depends on what you mean by getting something back for your money. And again, I am not picking on the West Side School project. I think that's a great use of those community development block grant dollars, but you guys gave them $1 million and there's only going to be 8 affordable units there. This is a much, much bigger bang for your buck, and we're not getting any money back from that.
Nope.
So
The $1 million we gave to the West Side School project, that also was just given away.
yes,
Okay,
and that was in the last year.
yep.
So I hope I don't sound too argumentative. I'm kind of getting hangry because I haven't had anything to eat since 7 o'clock this morning, and it was very
Oh.
small.
Well, I haven't eaten today yet, and I'm, the way I look at it, you're doing fine just to keep that much poise.
The other piece to remember, and it goes for the West Side Story, is these are federal funds to be used for a variety of programs. This isn't tax levy money. That $1 million was
No.
not tax levy,
No.
and this isn't tax levy.
Right. I didn't mean to make it sound like we were
Yeah.
pulling money out of our budget for private projects, but
Okay, Mr. Engelbert, David, that
Okay,
is.
so the money going to that West Side project though will be paid back correctly?
No.
Okay, that's not part of the one
Nope.
that goes back into the
Nope.
revolving fund. Okay, sorry about that.
Vinnie?
You kind of said what I already was going to say as well, but I just think that it's important to keep in mind with these, that is the intent of this funding, is to go to things like affordable housing. So
Mhm.
it's just passing through with its intent and leveraging millions of more dollars. So thank you.
Anything else? Okay, are you okay moving this till next time?
Yep.
I think we will move the discussion of land use services county addressing to another meeting. Tell me about what number 10, what we have to do for that. Standard
We
allowance.
discussed that.
revenue
That was
allowance.
the revenue allowance.
Okay, that's what I was hoping. Okay. Oh, wait, Bob? One more?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two thoughts. I think we might need more, we might need Mariah to come back, I think we've all gotten a lot of information today. And so I think it might be good to get more details since we're not voting on anything today anyway. So maybe for the next meeting, to have these department heads back again to, if maybe there's fine tuning or whatnot, or even just to hear it again. I think there's a lot to absorb today. And since I grabbed the floor, when we look at all these projects, again, I go back to the health and wellness of our community, and as helpful as it will be to address the entire county, I don't see that as much of a priority compared to the other things we've been talking about today. Thank you very much.
Alexis?
Thank you. I wanted to go a little bit different direction than Supervisor Boltman and plant the seed in my fellow supervisor's head of being higher level on some of these things. I think going through the merits of these projects and as oversight folks elected to steward this money, it's important that we understand the value and how these things are going to be implemented. But when we're talking about on the macro scale, allocating the ARPA dollars, I want to take a first glance at just the big pots of money and allocating dollars to the big pots of money, understanding that these are the priority projects and trusting our staff and the administration to bring those forward and execute those visions with the oversight committees, the subcommittees. And then my other comment was also to say that I also agree that the addressing the countywide addressing project is necessary, but we've already put it in the KIP. I mean, that should just be done. That's not something that I think the ARPA dollars should be used for. So thank you.
Vinnie?
Since we've had two people talking about addressing, I would like the opportunity to as well. I do not think these funds should be used for that.
I guess I hope we don't get into the weeds on addressing. If you just want to say
Yes.
generally, but truly, we shouldn't be discussing it without having somebody present it in terms of any kind of detail. So,
Yeah,
okay.
well, great. Then if that's the only one left, right? So that's going to be for the next one. Thank you.
Okay, the only other thing I will say is the next kick at these comes to finance. So if you're not on finance, you may want to kind of pay attention to how your project that you're interested in or not interested or whatever, how that's being discussed, tune in or come and test, whatever. But they'll get chewed on a lot more at finance before they come here again. So, okay. Benny?
Jen, are these going to finance before we talk about the addressing one? Because that's a fifth of the budget. So I want to will it have a weigh-in on what finance considers if we haven't talked about that one? Or will we wait to go to finance until we've talked about all of them that are like a major pot of money being proposed? Sorry, I just trying to figure out the process.
David, you want to comment on that? David Engelbert?
Think it's one of the topics that's been on this survey, and it can go to finance without coming back here first. I mean, for some consideration and discussion, if there's more details that need to be determined and how it might be worked out.
I think it might be fair to say that finance wouldn't bring it back here for a final decision if it hadn't been here for an initial discussion. Is that a fair statement? Okay, and Morgan.
So I guess just for clarification, this list that will be moving on to finance, is this the finite and complete list of possible projects? Or is there still a position for folks either within their committees or department heads or outside parties to propose ideas? Or is this the list that's moving forward?
I think right now, this is the initial list coming forward. Again, we don't have all the funds allocated. In addition, we're not sure we're allocating one of the projects. It's being discussed. So there are still funds available. I think what we need to have a discussion in finance is there interest in terms of either looking at some of those existing projects and expanding the funding, because we heard that said several times by county board supervisors, or is there interest of expanding that and looking for alternative projects, for example, with nonprofits. So I think that's the next part of the discussion with the finance committee.
So to clarify, I think you're saying this isn't necessarily the final list, but until we start wading through these and seeing, we won't know what monies are left.
Well, like I said, I think we need to clarify the obligated portion because that affects some of these budgets. But again, some individuals mentioned to spend more. I'm not sure where that fits in terms of priority, in terms of other funding sources, but I think that's something that the finance committee can, I guess, distill and then bring that back up to county board for consideration. So, for example, if the projects come back and refine the budgets and now we still have $1 million left, do we solicit projects internally yet in terms of our priorities, or do we actually want to put together a process to solicit input from other outside agencies? That's a big decision in terms of how we want to move forward, and that's where the discussion will happen at finance, and then they can come forward with a recommendation for that.
It would be helpful to me personally, and I think to others, if the staff as best they can could help us understand the criteria for which kinds of projects with nonprofits work and which don't. And I know that's hard, but maybe some thought could be given to how do you determine whether this one qualifies and this one doesn't? Maybe. I don't, David.
Yeah, okay, I guess I was looking for the numbers on the ARPA proposals from back in September. And while I am hearing, 2 or 3 members here saying that they don't think it's as important a project, we look at those numbers there on the rural addressing, and they had 47 votes that day. So, there was support for that project at that time, and that's the only thing I'd say is that finance needs to consider these numbers as well.
Okay, Vinnie?
Sorry, I don't mean to argue about it, but I feel like if we aren't going to have the discussion and we had it about all the other ones, it doesn't seem fair. So I know we want to maybe be ending the meeting, and I'm not trying to challenge the decision to put it off to the next one, but I feel just based off the retreat worksheet, it's not treating this project in the same method as all the others that had a presentation and had discussion from the board. If the addressing just goes back to finance and the decision's made, it's kind of saying maybe finance doesn't want any of the thoughts from the county board presently about it before they make the decision. But we had the discussion and the presentation on all the other projects, and this one is 1/5 of the entire pocket of money. So I'm trying to understand the logic of it. Thank you.
Looks like Mr. Engelbert would like to.
Yeah, I have
Comment
a
on it.
reaction to that, I guess. I mean, this whole presentation came here today wanting to get the input of county board. Finance did not make any decisions last week or even a listing of priorities. And as I said earlier, I think any recommendation that comes from finance will come back to the county board.
It has to.
I don't see finance having a final say. It's just trying to get the answers that we need to make those decisions. Whether you're working with some other agencies in the county, the social areas, the mental areas, or the addressing or soil and water.
I arbitrarily suggested that we not continue the addressing today, partly because of the time and partly because that is the one that hasn't been fleshed out as much. And therefore, there wasn't as much to present. But I really don't see finance making a recommendation immediately to do this. So I would certainly think, and even if we did, you can vote it down. I mean, that doesn't mean it passes here. So I don't know. I apologize if that's not fair, but there should be plenty of time for people to weigh in. Bob.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think you and Vinnie and Mr. Engelbert, clarified it well. I just want to echo Supervisor Schomo's comment that, yeah, let's just give it the same treatment as everything else got and come back to it next month. We're good. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move on to the end here. New business. Oral committee reports, anyone? Anyone want to say anything about the committee minutes? Or the vouchers, claims, and bills? Okay, what? I'm on a roll, yes. Next county board meeting? No. February 22nd at 10. And the per diem code is 125.
Said, Madam Chairperson, I'd like to make a motion we adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed.
Well done, Madam Chairperson.
Well, I don't know. I may have stirred up corn.